Oh, well, the arrival of this cute little canine means it's time for Dog of the Week, the regular feature on this show where each of us picks the week's worst movies.
That's right, Gene. And my dog this week is a fish called Piranha. And how do you like this for an example of brilliant thinking? See, the government has this secret project to create a new breed of piranha fish that can live in salt or fresh water, can reproduce 3 times as fast as before, and can be a secret military weapon in the Cold War. But the fish are accidentally released into a river, and they start attacking innocent swimmers and families on vacation with their tiny little low-budget jaws. Well, my favorite scene is when a victim is in the water being eaten alive by millions of piranha, and Kevin McCarthy comes to the rescue. Now, how does he come to the rescue? By diving into the water, naturally, and swimming toward the piranha. That's really great thinking, right? Next, they'll probably make a rip-off of the Towering Inferno, in which one guy jumps off the building and another guy jumps off to catch him.
Roger, my Wolfhound of the Week is a totally unfunny movie called Up in Smoke, featuring the hippie comedy team of Cheech and Chong, playing a couple of dope fiends trying to buy some marijuana and having a tough time finding the grass. Up in Smoke is being advertised with the slogan, "Don't go straight to this movie." The implication being, get half bagged on marijuana first. Well, any film that asks you to get smashed before you go see it must have something really bad to hide. And in Up in Smoke, it's the dialogue, which is 80 minutes of 2 jerks saying nothing but, "Hey, man."
Hey, man, how far you going, man?
Oh, right here it'd be fine, man.
Oh, man, you ain't not scared of a little speed, are you, man?
Oh, you got some speed, man?
You know, a lot of reactionary types have been saying for years they'd like to punch out a hippie. This may be the first picture to give them a legitimate excuse.
You said it, man. Uh-oh, Gene, this Bowser in the balcony means it's time for Dog of the Week, a regular feature where each of us picks the week's worst movie.
Well, Roger, you and Spot may not believe this, but I have just seen my first nudie karate film.
You're kidding.
No, I guess you'd call that genre chop sexy. The film is The Bod Squad. 5 nubile Western girls are sold into slavery in Asia, where they are bought and sexually abused by some Oriental bad guys. Wearing Fredericks of Osaka costumes, these women get off their feet in strange ways. For sex objects, their specialty, violent massage to the brain as they bump and grind their way to freedom. Most laughable is that one of the girls falls in love with a nice Oriental guy named Ho-Ho, a regular ding-dong, and a great moment in movie history comes when this girl says with a straight face to her boyfriend, "I love you, Ho-Ho."
Well, ho, Gene, maybe she's in love with the Jolly Green Giant. Anyway, my dog this week has a great set of canines. It's Count Dracula and his vampire bride. The vampire is played by Christopher Lee, and he has great taste in necks. He could drain the Bod Squad in 20 minutes. This guy has come back from the dead so often he ought to rent his grave by the month. Anyway, after a little coy necking with his bride-to-be, he puts her on a sacrificial altar in a phony ceremony that looks like a cut-rate 4th of July. Hollywood has a lot of new vampire movies coming out in the works, and I believe me that they got to be all uphill from here.
I'm sure you're right. Well, look at those ears. I bet he liked Watership Down. At any rate, this mongrel on the mezzanine means it's time for Dog of the Week, our regular feature where each of us picks the week's worst movies.
Okay, Gene, my dog this week is a wet blanket named Slithis. Got that great title, Slithis. You don't know if you're saying it or swallowing it. It's about this strange creature that grows up in the water near a nuclear waste dump, and then it crawls up onto the land to devour its innocent victims. You'd think they'd see it coming. It looks like Bigfoot, and it's wearing the cruddiest costume of the year, a slimy shag rug with seaweed and oatmeal stuck all over it. Send this monster to the cleaners. All during this movie, people are going, "No, stop, anything but that." The only problem is the people aren't in the movie, they're in the audience.
Well, Roger, my dog this week is a 4-year-old film named The Devil's Reign that's suddenly come back to a lot of theaters advertised as starring John Travolta. That's a complete lie. The Devil's Reign stars Ernest Borgnine as a devil's helper trying to hang on to some lost souls. Travolta is on screen for less than a minute. This was his first film. He had only 1 line of dialogue in it. Most of the time, he has red and green wax melting all over his face. It looks like he fell asleep on a pizza. There he is right at the end. Now, of course, the reason why Travolta is being advertised as starring in this ridiculous drivel is that right now he's the hottest actor in Hollywood. So beware of films you've never heard of promising big stars. One reason you never heard of them? They're lousy.
Uh-oh, there's Spot again, and that mongrel in the mezzanine means it's time for Dog of the Week, where we each pick the week's worst movies.
Well, Roger, my dog is called Dogs. That's right, Dogs, a would-be thriller about a bunch of California canines who go berserk one day and start attacking people. Now, you'd never do that, would you, Spot? No, and thank goodness. Dog features all kinds of mongrels jumping around and biting people. Why does the town in this movie become a mailman's nightmare? I'd like to tell you, but the movie never explains it. It's just something in the air, something to do with a nearby power plant. Well, you like to see flesh chewed off humans? Well, maybe you need a rabies shot more than you need to see Dogs. By the way, Dogs is a 2-year-old movie being brought back to some cities now with a huge TV ad campaign. So be on the lookout. Don't let the ads for dogs put the bite on you.
Put the bite on you,
You
not
got it.
badging. Okay, well, my dog this week is in the spirit of the season. I'm going to have the turkey of the week, and its name is Message from Space, an imported Japanese space opera inspired by Star Wars. Now, it's all about how people from another planet threaten to take over the universe and how the good guys fight back in spaceships after being summoned to battle by, now you got to get this, radioactive nuggets that glow in the dark. Now, look at these trashy special effects. Model airplanes heading for a poached egg. But then, what do you expect from a movie where the characters jump out of the way just before a nuclear bomb hits, then they pull out their swords for a real fight? This movie is a message from space, all right, and the message is send this movie to Mars.
Well, what have you got against the Martians, you know? Well, that's the signal from Spot the Wonder Dog, who can spot bad films like fire hydrants, that it's time for Dog of the Week, the feature where each of us picks the week's worst movies.
Well, Spot, my dog this week is an expensively publicized movie called Beyond and Back. It wants to prove there's life beyond the grave, but I've got very bad news for you. I'm afraid that it doesn't. Instead, it gives us very bad actors playing people who've allegedly died and departed from their bodies and taken an all-expense-paid trip around the universe and return once again to Earth. But what I want to know is if these people really made it back, how come they aren't in the movie? Well, a pseudoscientist stands around narrating the film, but the real hero is whoever designed the intensive TV ad campaign. Beyond and Back is a good example of something called a four-wall movie. That means the distributor comes into town and rents a lot of theaters, all four walls, for a flat fee, and then plows a fortune into advertising. The idea is to suck in a lot of people before the word gets out that this film is a turkey. The only good thing about most four-wall movies, Gene, is that the walls of the theaters have doors, so you can get out.
I think I'll never get inside that one. My Dog is another fast buck affair with a big advertising campaign. It's a depressing hangdog, sorry about that, film, a shallow would-be documentary, The Late Great Planet Earth, which interprets current world crisis like the oil shortage, famine, and air pollution as signs that the world is coming to an end, much as is prophesied in the book of Revelations. In other words, you can pay up to $4 to see this movie and walk out of the theater feeling thoroughly depressed. Orson Welles serves as narrator, but even he can't sell this bilge, which speculates that we're all headed toward the end of the world, with the signals being the founding of Israel and the European Common Market. What a lot of nonsense.
Hello, Spot the Wonder Dog. Every time we see Spot on the balcony, that means it's time for Dog of the Week, where each of us picks the week's worst movies.
These films are even worse than The Warriors. Roger, My Dog is Secrets, a confusing, supposedly meaningful English love story that is being billed in some cities as a new film starring Jacqueline Bisset, the beautiful star of The Deep and The Greek Tycoon. Well, Secrets isn't a new film. It was made several years ago. And the only reason it's being brought back to theaters now is that Bisset has a sex scene in the movie where you can see her naked body. The scene lasts about 3 or 4 minutes. She made it before she became a star, and now some Sharpie distributors are trying to capitalize on her bare chest. The film otherwise is thoroughly confusing as it examines secret love relationships entered into by Bisset, by her husband, and by her young daughter. But the real secret in Secrets is that the film is a completely phony ripoff. It's not new.
It's not new. My film is newer, I guess, than Secrets, but it should have been made before the invention of the motion picture. The dog is called The Stranger and the Gunfighter, and it's sort of a United Nations of schlock. It stars a Chinese kung fu expert, an American cowboy, and a spaghetti western. It was produced by Italians and shot in Spain and Hong Kong. And how do these people talk to each other? Well, that'd only be a problem if they had anything to say. The kung fu expert has been sent to America to find out what his dead uncle did with a fortune in gold. Well, it turns out that the secret of the gold has been tattooed on the bottoms of 4 of the uncle's girlfriends. And so the Chinese guy and the gunfighter team up to find the girls and get to the bottom of things.
Oh, no.
Then there are lots of phony kung fu fights and boring gun battles. And you know, this film has a little something to disappoint almost everyone.
Well, enough of that. Here's Spot to remind us it's time for Dog of the Week, where each of us picks the week's worst movies.
Hi, Spot. Thanks for barking after I was talking about that last movie. And by the way, I like your collar there. I think you went shopping over the weekend. My dog this week is Debbie Does Dallas, an X-rated hardcore porno film that rips off everybody's favorite pro football cheerleaders, the Dallas Cowgirls. The movie, needless to say, has nothing to do with the Cowgirls, but it got a lot of publicity when the Dallas team sued for infringement of copyright. And believe me, copyright is the least of the things that are infringed on in this movie. It's about a young girl's attempt to raise enough money to fly to Dallas and become a cheerleader. And while working as a clerk in a sporting goods store, Debbie finds out in no time at all what a good sport the owner of the store is. But the movie is so boring and repetitive and tasteless, like most hardcore films, that about halfway through I began to realize that it doesn't need a movie critic to analyze it. It needs a gynecologist.
Well, I saw it. I thought she was kind of cute in the film. But anyway, Roger, you know what happened to Nancy Kwan, the Oriental actress who became a big splash some 17 years ago with 2 fine films, The World of Susie Wong and Flower Drum Song?
Frankly, no.
No, and you don't care either, I guess. Well, sad to say, Nancy Kwan has fallen on hard times. She's the star of my dog of the week, a little film called Wonder Women. That's Wonder Women, not to be confused with the comic book or the TV show, although I suppose if you were confused and wanted the picture of the rip-off artist who made this trash, probably you'd be happy to sell you a ticket. In the film, Nancy Kwan plays a crazy surgeon who runs a multi-million-dollar body shop, and I mean literally a body shop. She and her henchwoman kidnap famous athletes and surgically attach parts of their bodies to rich old men who are about to kick the bucket. Of course, she charges them an arm and a leg.
Oh.
Now, here you see her right-hand girl who's about to get her a right leg.
Oh.
What an outrageous story. You might say this is one that really goes out on a limb.
You might. Okay, so much for the dogs. Now to recap the major films on this week's program.